Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of GFIS National Solutions Chit Chat. Today, I've got Adrian Rattenbury. Adrian, how are you doing?
I'm not too bad, thank you. Surviving.
I'm trying to work out how many years do we originally go back since the first RPT course that I went on with you?
Oh, a lot.
Thanks. I was hoping you were going to say, oh, it's only about 5, Graham, because you only look about 30.
Yeah, but I mean, the last year seems to have lasted for 20, so
That's true. That's true.
that
Yeah,
doubles the amount of time we've known each other. I'm going to say at least 20 years.
it's got to be that. I think the original one I did with you was in I think Birmingham in Sutton. I think it might have been Sutton. And then we did the advanced level 4 plus. It was at the director's course over in Barcelona.
That's right. Yeah.
That was a fun week.
That's a while ago.
Yeah, that one is at least 10 years, at least, because that was when I was with Wilson.
Right.
And Wilson sponsored that week, I believe.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, they did.
So that's got to be at least 10 years. And then prior to that, maybe about 15, 20 years, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
So for everybody who doesn't know, Adrian Rattenbury, RPT, tell me all about the RPT.
The RPT, so just over 30 years old. The head office is in Madrid in Spain. Myself with Luis Mediero, the two founder presidents of the organization. And basically we created our own coaching system, our own coaching methodology, which is now we've trained about 100,000 coaches from 124 countries around the world over the last 30 years. So I'm pretty sure if you'd have sat both of us down 30 years ago and said, you're going to create this thing that's, an international brand and everything, we'd have gone, yeah, right. But we have, in terms of, the business and the whole thing, it's picked up, it's run, and it's still going, and we're still running courses, we're still expanding, and still going strong, touch wood.
So let me take you back 30 years ago then, when you guys first set that up, because I'm sure there's been a load of sports people, coaches in a variety of different sports around the world who have thought, I have a concept, I think this will revolutionize and change the way we think in the world of sports coaching. How did you guys then not only think about that, because I'm sure it was having a pint, Adrian, at the time, but then how do you convert it to over 100,000 people going through your coaching qualifications?
There were initially there were a group of us from Europe. At that time, there was pretty much only like the governing body award, like the LTA here. And then at that time, the USPTR were starting to do a few things in and around Europe. And then basically a group of us together, we got together. There was Massimo from Italy, Klaus from Germany, Mickey from Austria, obviously Luis from Spain, Pedro from Portugal, myself. And we basically said, why don't we create a European thing? If you look at all the data, I think something like 70% of the tour is actually in Europe. And, probably 70% of the top 100 in the world are European players. So we're like, why don't we actually have something that's pan-European that we can actually, take out there and show people this is how it works. Ultimately, what happened is various people didn't drop out as such, but had other avenues to pursue and things like that. Massimo went to work with Nike and at one stage was in charge of the Juventus contract with Nike. So you kind of let him do that, I think. Yeah. And basically it finished up with myself and Luis really driving it. And then obviously being based in Spain and the contacts and everything there, it became a pretty much Spanish driven methodology, which we've continued to use. And obviously you argue all you want about systems and everything, but you can't argue that Spain has kept 10 men in the top 100 of the ATP for 30 consecutive years, which no other country's done. And with a population of 35 million, it's pretty good going.
Yeah, it's interesting. I lived in the States for 4 years and played out there and went and did some Vandermeer stuff and did some Boletier stuff. And
Yeah.
then when I came home and I was at Loughborough, I did what was originally the LTA level 2 or 3. I can't remember what it was now. And then for some reason, I was drawn to you guys a little bit, just for some. I've always been somebody who's wanted to know more and have more breadth of knowledge. But it is a different program, isn't it? It's a different way of delivering tennis coaching.
Yeah, it's a different methodology. I think the one big thing that we teach is we build a player from bottom up. So if you've got your classic performance triangle as such, the base of our triangle is actually footwork. So we would teach footwork first, then we would teach the technique, and then the tactic, and then finally the mental skills. But all 4 elements are always involved in an actual lesson. So even if you're teaching your 7-year-old beginners, you're still going to teach them footwork, technical, tactical, and mental. And obviously that's not always the same with other coaching organizations. So, you know, some teach the tactics before the technique, for example, but for us, footwork is first. So if you can't get to the ball, doesn't matter how well you can hit it, you're not going to get the chance to hit it. So getting to the ball in the right place in the first place is the number one thing. And then to have the technical ability to hit the ball. So, you know, we can discuss now, I'm sure within 2 minutes, we can come up with a way to beat Roger Federer. Yep. We can do that, but we can't beat him because we don't have the technique. Well, we don't have the fitness and the footwork in the first place, but we don't have the technical ability to actually apply the tactic to beat him. So, you know, Roger dominated world tennis pretty much until Rafa came along. And Rafa came with a left hand, heavy topspin. He could get that ball up to the high backhand of Federer. Prior to that, nobody else could because they didn't have that technical ability. So, you know, a couple of years ago when Federer beat Rafa in the final of the Australian Open, in his winning speech, he actually thanked Rafa for making him a better player. You know, he had to find a solution to this new challenge that was given. And it was technical. So, you know, tactically you can be brilliant, but if you don't have the technical ability, you can't apply the tactic. So we would teach the technique first, then we apply the tactical skill based on your technical ability, and then finally, obviously, the mental side of the game, which comes in at the very end in terms of a lesson, but it is in from the very beginning. Again, previously, we would only teach mental skills if there was a problem, whereas we teach footwork, technique, and tactics to prepare you to play, but we only solved the remedy, or we only came up with a remedy for mental skills when it became an issue, rather than giving you the skills to make sure you don't have those issues in the first place. So obviously all those 4 elements go into a lesson now for a complete beginner.
And I've just reflected now on why I like the RPT programs all those years ago, because I wrote the fundamentals of movement resource and programs for what was Sports Coach UK at the time. And I've just realized I probably stole one of your lines without maybe giving you a bit of credit, because we always talk about movement being pivotal to everything that you do. So you have to work on good movement patterns. And I can almost remember now sitting in Barcelona, think, well, you see coaches, and I've seen a lot of tennis coaches over the years as well, stand with baskets of ball or drop feeding players with balls. And I've always thought, well, I've never had the luxury, Adrian, of standing still on a tennis court to hit a forehand. Never. No, technically that forehand's a little bit mid-80s kind of stuff, but I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to stand there and just hit a ball. I'm either running, sweating, on the stretch, outside my hitting zone, and trying to pass somebody or make a play. And I just thought then, right, we need to massively work on this, because you're right. Well, first of all, the decision-making process, which is mental, about how quickly I saw the ball and where I see the pattern. And then my acceleration patterns, my full flow, my deceleration to get into some position before I do anything technically is massive.
Yeah. If you can't get to the ball, you can't hit it. You know, you could have the perfect forehand, but if you can't get to hit it in the first place, It's a skill you're never going to get to use. So, you know, and very rarely do we ever see footwork taught. You know, it's and I think more than ever now, we're probably teaching basic skills more than we used to.
Yeah.
Because kids are coming into the sport younger, which is another discussion we can have as to whether that's a good thing or not. And also, you know, kids don't go out and play like we used to.
Absolutely.
So we are teaching kids to run and jump and skip and all the basics that you know we did just ordinarily, which kids, because of society and the way we've gone now, just don't do. You know, they've got incredibly fast thumbs, but apart from that, there's no movement.
Yeah, no, you're right, and that's where a lot of the fundamentals came from. And I guess the second part is this concept around the mind, the mentality stuff. So when I went into performance psychology originally, people used to only come and see me when things went wrong. Oh, I've lost my confidence. Oh, I'm not playing very well, and oh, I've had an injury. Can you fix it? And I've always said, no, not really. I can't fix things. I haven't got a magic wand. We can work towards being more positive and changing your mindset and being, you know, thinking towards being better. But I can't fix it. So having the opportunity to build it as you would build something technically, for me, just makes perfect sense. So I've always said to the sports that I work with, can I come in early and build it? And we're almost going through I guess what strength physiotherapists did about 10, 15 years ago. They changed their mindset to prehabilitation more than rehabilitation.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's so many things that we do automatically to prevent something going wrong, and yet we don't seem to apply that same theory in sports coaching. So, you know, I'm pretty sure everybody's got car insurance just in case you have a crash. You know, you take your car to be serviced every year just so it doesn't go wrong. You know, you get your boiler serviced every year. All these things you do in everyday life to prevent it going wrong. And yet when you go and play sport, you're quite happy to go and crash and burn and then think, oh, what do I do now? Rather than preventing that thing in the first place.
Yeah,
and I think that's, you know, we don't prepare kids to compete.
Yeah, you've seen more junior tennis than I have over the years, Adrian, only because you're a little bit older. But how many times have you, thanks, how many times have you seen kids on court crying their eyes out, or kids on court throwing rackets, losing it? And I was one of those juniors. I went through a spell where, you know, I was throwing a lot of rackets, but I didn't know why. And I also had no strategy or intervention for actually working through that. I just knew that I was either upset because I was losing to somebody who I thought I was better than, or I was upset because I'd been cheated, but I didn't have the tools to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly in this country, I think one of the biggest problems is we push kids into competitive tennis at such an early age. You know, I know there's been various changes recently, but, you know, pretty much we were pushing kids into competitive tennis at 7 years old, you know, playing for points, playing for rankings, you know, nationals and all this sort of stuff, but never preparing them to play. We taught them how to hit the ball, but, you know, if you go to a mini red tournament, even now, you go to mini red tournament, guarantee you pretty much there is somebody on the court watching to help them keep score. Oh, you need to go and stand there now, and you stand there and you serve like this. You're not ready to play. You know, if you can't go and play independently, you're not ready to go and compete. You should not be competing if you don't know how to play the game. And yet we're putting kids in that environment saying, right, go and play, go and win, because you get points and then you get your rankings, and mum and dad can have a couple of extra dinners because they can invite some friends that they couldn't invite before. But now you're better than they are, we'll invite them. For what? You know, and it's crazy, you know, you compare it to the Spanish, there is no tournaments in Spain for mini tennis. They hardly touch mini tennis. First tournament's under 10. So you go back years ago, we had kids at 7, 8, 9. We'd have taught them how to play, match play within our coaching lessons. Now you send them to play in a tournament. So they're not actually learning how to compete in a let's say a safe environment. They're going and playing tournaments. I mean, no wonder kids drop out. You know, you're 7 years old and you've lost 3 tournaments in a row, and now your parents think you're useless. Well, you might as well go and do the piano instead. Pointless staying on with tennis because you've already played 3 tournaments and you've lost them all. So we're not going to waste our money going any further.
Yeah, Adrian, I'm so pleased my parents didn't allow me to play the piano.
Well, I do.
Very good.
So,
you play a bit of tennis as well.
and I'm glad my parents made me.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't have to make me a lot, but I'm glad I did.
What's really interesting is that, and it's not just tennis, I think in the UK, is there's a lot of competition early doors, and there has been some research which I guess people will discuss and debate about early specialization of sport, but also there's ability to try different sports before you choose the right selection. There's been a few tennis players over the years. Leighton Hewitt springs to mind in terms of playing Aussie rules football as well as tennis, and Roger himself played, you know, more than just tennis at an early age.
Yeah. I mean, like Lendl's a scratch golfer. You know, he played professional golf when he quit professional tennis. You know, I mean, I think that I mean, from what the research I've read, that multi-sport beginning gives you lots of different, you know, avenues to pursue. You know, are you an individual sport person? Are you a team sport person? You know, you mess up on a tennis court, you've only got yourself to blame and nowhere to hide. And now you need quite a strong personality and character as a young person, as a child, to deal with that. Now, you make a mistake as a striker in football, it's like almost expected. You know, you watch the Premier League now, 20 shots and 7 on target. That means 13 you missed. Yeah, that's 13 mistakes you made because your job is to shoot on target. Okay, so you made 30 mistakes. Nobody minds. That's fine. Just keep shooting. Eventually, it's going to go in. Okay, but if you're a goalkeeper, you can only make 1 mistake. You make 1 mistake, we saw the match at the weekend. You know, Liverpool with City, 2 mistakes by the goalkeeper cost you 2 goals. So you can't make a mistake. So again, you need a real strong personality to be a goalkeeper, especially at the younger age, because you're going to let a few in. Yeah. And you know, so that those things we take for granted, but we shouldn't take for granted. And I think that mental side is really, really important. And preparing kids to compete, not just to go and play, prepare to compete, learning to win and learning to lose, 2 massive skills for life.
I've got a presentation to deliver to some hockey parents in the next 2 weeks, and it's all about, 1, how do they communicate better with their kids, and 2, understanding that actually their kids are going to literally fail all the time in the world of sport. Because you know, if somebody passes the ball to them in hockey, they're probably going to miss trap 40-50% of them. So that's a lot of failure. But parents need to see that, acknowledge it, accept it, and actually praise the learning that comes out of it.
Yeah, I think there's only, you know, there's only 5, the top 5 players in the world win more points in a year than they lose. 5. So there's maybe, I don't know, 1,000 players on the tour. Only 5 are actually successful.
Yeah.
So you enter Wimbledon, there's 127 failures in the draw, 127 losers in the draw. There's only 1 winner.
Yeah.
You know, so if you have to learn to win, you have to learn to lose.
Yeah, one of my favorite little activities with junior players was always, right, outside of the top 5, and you can pick any number between 5 and 200, and that I'd let them pick a random number, and then I'd ask them to go and find out what the win-loss record was, and it would be around about 45-50% ish, somewhere around that. You know, depends on where they went and who was having a good year. Sometimes you had a good year, you won 55%, lost 45%. And it was just to get the kids to look at the fact that you're in the top 100 in the world. You are an incredible player, yet you're still losing 45% of the world, 45% of matches. So at 13 and 14, maybe that's okay to lose a few matches then, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, isn't it? You know, but again, you know, certainly the younger age group, still the parents, unless they've come up through a sporting background, the parents don't understand nor appreciate that. You know, and the amount of times that you see you know, the kids go and play some tournaments, then lose a few, and then they change the coach.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you've lost the coach. And I go, okay. But if your kid doesn't come first in the English test at school and the maths test and the history test and the geography test, are you knocking on the head teacher's door saying, we need a different geography teacher, my son needs a different maths teacher because it's your fault? No, we accept that they're doing the best job they can. But in sport, it doesn't work like that because everything's black and white. You win and you lose.
Yeah.
And certainly getting parents, you know, to go on that long journey. You know, you're picking up kids at 10 years old or something, and they want to become a pro player. Well, that's a long journey. And to actually say, well, actually, you know, for the next 2 or 3 years, probably not going to win a lot because we're not bothered. Because, you know, how many times do you get under 14, under 16, under 18 champion, whatever? There was football last night, Bournemouth player, Pearson. I don't know whether you watched the match. So Pearson plays for Bournemouth now. He was, in 2013, he was Man United's Young Player of the Year. He played for England at every age group up to under 20. And he plays for Bournemouth in the Championship now. So, you know, being brilliant as a junior doesn't come out the other end.
And that's
very rare, very rare.
A success, though, isn't it, Adrian? Because there'll be even more who played for England, who were at Man U, who don't play anymore.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
And tennis is probably even tougher than football, especially in this country, I think.
I think again, the stats, I think only 10% of the top 100 juniors in the world ever go on to make the top 100 on the pro tour. So, and again, it's a 4-year, according to the ITF, it's a 4-year cycle to progress from junior to senior tennis. And it doesn't matter to a certain extent what age you start, it takes 4 years. So again, if you look at the Spanish 15, 16, you know, they then start looking at moving you on to playing on the tour at the lower level, because it's going to take 4 years. So come 2021, you know, you're ready, you're up and running. Here we play them until they're 18, almost the 19th birthday. And then that 4-year cycle comes again. So now you're 23 before you're ready to play. 23, Tim Clijsters had won a couple of Grand Slams, gone home, had a baby, come back and won another one. At the same time, a British player's thinking, oh, I might go and play the tour now.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can weight up all different ways you want, but at the end of the day, you know, it's a 4-year cycle. Only the really, really top players would actually, you know, make that a shorter journey because they're just so good. Yeah. But as a normal life, you know, a normal player on the tour, that's the process.
Yeah, exceptions to the rule, and every sport has that. I mean, Wayne Rooney, you can talk about in football when he came on for Everton that time, and there's always going to be exceptions to the rule.
Yeah.
So you guys have sorted out your pillars, your values of the RPT. You set the RPT up. How did you guys go about convincing the world and every individual country? Because every individual country has almost like an NGB, likes of the LTA, who, you know, the LTA in this country and the FA in this country and the ECB, we do coaching. Mm-hmm. Who are you guys to come in, and how do you get in?
I think, you know, we ran with it for a few years before we brought it into the UK. So I was working with Luis in Spain and Portugal, Italy, various countries around Europe and everything, before we actually then brought it into the UK. So we had some history, we had some credibility, we had some background, and obviously the Spanish player success.
Yeah.
So I think it was an alternative education. Really, it was we specifically aimed in the first place at existing coaches to get an additional qualification to your existing qualifications, get another source of information, get your, you know, broaden your knowledge, broaden the depth and breadth of your knowledge. I mean, we spoke the other day about, you know, if you did your bachelor's degree or your master's degree and you do your referencing at the end and all you put is the LTA or one point of reference, you're not going to get too much credit for that degree. You know, you need to go and get your source of information from a range of references. And I think that's what, you know, that was kind of what we were saying in the first place. You know, just have a look at another idea, have another look. And, you know, if the worst thing you'll learn is that you don't want to teach that way. That's the worst thing that can happen. And what does that do? It actually reinforces that what you think is right is definitely right. So we've actually made you a better coach because we've not taught you anything. That's the worst that could possibly happen, you know. But obviously it's a different approach, it's a different mentality, it's a lot more technical than anything you'll find, you know, within the LTA system. It's very clear structure, and I think the other thing is we positively encourage you to think and come up with your own ideas. It's not follow this and do as you're told, and, you know, don't ask questions, be quiet and you'll be fine, you'll be pass, you know, you'll pass. It's like, no, you need to ask questions, you need to question us, because that's how you will understand it better. And I think it was a different approach from a tutor's point of view. You know, the way we teach the courses is different, and obviously the content's completely different. So it was, yeah, I think in the first place it was convincing people to look elsewhere for information, and then obviously by securing coaches who are already actively full-time coaches and getting them into the system, and again working with Wilson back in those days, you know, it's much easier then to get the, you know, coaches who have not trained before to become recommended by coaches who have trained before, that have gone through our system and our methodology. So that's, you know, that's kind of how it worked. And then, you know, as your numbers grow, that gives you the broader base. So obviously you're going to get more people feeding into it. And virtually every country that we work in, it's through an existing coach who's done our course. So, you know, I've done Greece, Hungary, Romania, and then Malaysia, China, Thailand, India, all because somebody's done a course with us, either from that country or then gone to work in that country and said, can you come here? Can you come here? You know, Luis has done virtually the whole of Latin America. You know, he's virtually every country in South America he's been to, because somebody's done a course. And, you know, maybe the course was in Argentina and somebody from Brazil came and they said, well, can you come to Brazil now, or Peru or whatever? And that's just how it, you know, it's worked over time. And that's normal, you know, that's normal business. You know, that word of mouth, fortunately for us, that word of mouth became international. And then, you know, we then picked up other, you know, we used to run all the tennis camps for the ATP worldwide. So, you know, you've got that credibility. We used to run the Smash tennis program for the ATP. You know, we work with the WTA. You know, we recently signed a deal with UNICEF. You know, so you've got that global, I guess, acceptability, credibility, which makes it, you know, not an easy sell. It's never easy, but obviously it's easier than not having any backing in the first place, which is what we did have in the first place.
Yeah, so, again, you know, when you think about having that pint and conversation about starting the whole thing up maybe 30 years ago to where you guys are now, that's a big business, as well as, you know, some passion in tennis.
Yeah. I mean, it's you know, certainly and it's grown. You know, we started with tennis. We start with the RPT for tennis. I mean, we only do the tennis in the UK, but they have the RPG for golf, the RPF for fitness, the RPS for spa, the RPP for paddle tennis, which is coming here now. And then the RPM for multimedia, and then the Sports Marketing Institute came out of that. And then the International Coaches Institute was created, which is the holding company now above all the RPP brands. And then you've got the corporate athlete program, which is, you know, working in the corporate world using what we know from sport. And that's all been driven basically from tennis 30 years ago. So it is, you know, it's a pretty big business across the board.
Yes, yeah, so sitting there now, reflecting on what's happened over the last 30 years, I'm assuming that you guys didn't plan for that to happen, but you had to have some core values that drove it?
Yeah, I think it's those core values. I think it's having that system, that structure, the teta fime, technical, tactical, physical, and mental, and that system applies to everything that we do. So even if you do the corporate athlete, working with the chief executive of Santander, we're still talking technical, tactical, physical, and mental. And if you don't have the physical base, it doesn't matter how good technically you are, because you're not going to be able to apply that because you're off sick half the time. So, 3 glasses of red wine at lunchtime doesn't really give you a good afternoon performance. And, just simple stuff like that, which in the corporate world, I mean, it's better now than it used to be, but it's still not fully understood, that whole process. So I think having that very clear structure of what you need to develop a player was pretty critical. And I think the two things I'd say that we had, which is what paid off, is the persistence to keep going and the perseverance to keep going. And that's still the same now. I think, I ran my first course in India in 2013, and we started planning it in 2009. So, 4 years, you're working on that project for 4 years before it actually comes to fruition. And I think just having that, it's almost like the dripping tap, just that nagging until, you eventually you get there, or you just say, actually, this is just not going to happen. But I think a lot of the time people, for me, give in too early. You've got to keep going. And that's probably the two things that we really did have, is that perseverance. And Luis now is still an absolute perfectionist in everything that he does. And it's funny, actually, because when we started the RPT, Luis didn't speak any English and I didn't speak any Spanish. And we had the initial meetings with another friend of ours who was Argentinian, who spoke, I think, about 7 languages, Carlos. So he used to translate. And we made this pact very early to say, right, I'll learn Spanish and you learn English. And Luis now speaks fluent English, can read English, speaks fantastic English, which does mean I didn't ever really need to learn the Spanish. So, which I to be honest, I tried, but I just found it, I'm not a language. I was never really taught languages at school. So, but we started, we couldn't even speak to each other in the first case. So, overcoming that barrier was quite a challenge, because we're talking pre-Google Translate.
Yeah. But that's also good coaching as well, by the way, because I think one of the big things about the relationship and the connection between a coach and a pupil is that ability to communicate the message, and how do you get it across?
Yeah, I think, I've been in China now for I did China probably about 15 years ago. I first started going to China, and then we changed the business model over there and everything. We were based out of Hong Kong initially, which was still pretty much, well, it was then an English colony or British colony. Obviously, that's changed now, but now we're based out of Beijing. So everything we do in China is through translation. So we have to work with the translators, and that it's another skill again. You can't talk quickly. You've got to talk slower. You can only talk in short little sentences. It's very difficult to have humor. It's very difficult to make jokes in a foreign language and them actually work. You say something really funny and you're laughing and everybody else is just staring at you. And then you'll say something and they're all laughing. You go, I didn't even say anything funny. And because you don't know what the translator's actually saying.
That must be why the Leeds United manager never comes across funny. He is funny. It's just the translator.
Yeah, and I think that's we've had stuff. We're only talking earlier here about translation, and I remember we actually got European funding for the street tennis project that we've got, or that we have now, and everything was originally written in Spanish. So we then employed a translator to actually put it into English. And I remember one coming back and it said, run on bottom line with lame leg. And I'm like, what is that? So you look at the picture of the drill, and run with lame leg is hop. Bottom line is baseline. So instead of putting hop on the baseline, it said run with lame leg on bottom line. That was the actual translation. And I think that's the key, is that you don't need a translator, you need an interpreter. And Thomas, who I work with in China, is brilliant, because he understands tennis. He's very knowledgeable himself, very good coach himself. And he can take what I give him in English, not just translate it, but then interpret it into Chinese, so the people actually on the course can understand it. And you can see that, because, you know, I give the instructions, then we send them out to practice, and you see that they're practicing what you've just told them. And I remember one of our first experiences in China was that we had a translator, and by lunchtime on the first day, I'm starting to question everything because nothing's working. And then there was only one other guy on the course that spoke English. So I just said to him, you know, is it me or is something not working here? And he said, oh yeah, the problem is your translator. He actually doesn't speak very good English, and he doesn't speak the same Chinese that we do. So he's interpreting what you're saying incorrectly, and then we're interpreting what he's saying incorrectly. And in that case, two negatives were not a positive. And we literally had to change the translator on, you know, break on the first day, because it was just all over the place. But you're right, it brings you a completely different coaching skill set than ones you've, you know, probably used before. And that's half the fun.
I'm going to go and get my street tennis cheetah pack out from the loft, Adrian. I'm going to see if there's any more little stories where I can catch you up on.
Probably.
So how much do you think the massive success of Spanish tennis has helped you guys really flourish as an organization?
Of course, in terms of marketing, there's no doubt about it. And I think, again, it's the attitude as well of the Spanish coaches. You know, you get this sharing of ideas, you get this, everybody wants, all the Spanish coaches want all the Spanish coaches to be better. You know, they'll help you in any way they can to become a better coach. They'll share ideas. They'll tell you their biggest secrets if it's going to help you become better. Whereas most places in the world, that doesn't happen. You know, you get a really good idea and you keep it up your sleeve just in case one day you might get to use it. Whereas they're just so open and wanting to share and also wanting to improve. So, you know, people like Emilio Sanchez, Tony Nadal, Tony Cascales, the coach of Ferrero, Juan Bosch, the coach of Moya, they actually trained with us. You know, they actually took our courses because they wanted to learn how to coach. So, you know, we can honestly say, you know, Tony Nadal trained with the RPT and it was the RPT Pro of the Year. You know, it's true. We didn't give it to him. We didn't say, oh, you're really good. You know, you're working with Rafa. We'll give you our qualification. No, he took the course, you know, in the same way that other people take the courses. And again, we don't see that very often around the world. You know, you don't get people like that. You know, Emilio Sanchez, you know, top 10 in the world, singles and doubles. You know, I don't know how many titles he didn't win, but he wants to come to learn how to coach with you. And you know, we've run now a lot of courses for the ATP for players coming off the tour. And I think that, you know, it kind of gives you that credibility. And you also believe in your own system a lot more then. You know, I did a course in Romania a couple of years ago, and I forgot the name of the player now. It was top Romanian player, and he had the number one service stats in world tennis at the time. And the first thing he asked me was to look at his serve. Can you have a look at my serve? I'm like, you've just come off the tour and you're the best, you know, you've got the best service stats. And that was the first thing he asked to do on the course. And we found something, you know, within 10, 20 balls, we found something. It's like, nobody's ever told me that before. I'm like, well, you should have come to me years ago, but you've got that credibility, and now we have no problem selling the courses in Romania because, he was the number one player in Romania. Everybody knows him in Romania. And if he's come on the course and taken it, then there's absolutely no excuse for anybody else not to do the same. And I think that's, you're genuinely saying these people have taken the course, and it's not just Spanish tennis. We always talk about the success of Spanish players, but it's not. It's the Spanish academies. Most of the Eastern European players, the Russians and everything, they're all training in the Spanish academies. They're all in Spain. They're not training in Moscow. They're training in Barcelona or in Alicante or something. So although we look at, Spain's kept 10 players in the top 100 in the world, I don't know how many players there are in the top 100 in the world that have benefited from the Spanish methodology.
So seeing that we're talking about learning, because I like that concept, and one of the reasons for doing these YouTube things is to share some learning. What would be your top 3 learning experiences that you've taken out of the last 30 years with the RPT? Let's stick with purely from a tennis point of view.
From a tennis point of view, I would think a very clear coaching vision. We talk on all our courses about making sure you have a coaching philosophy, and I don't care what that is, but have one. Too many people just go and coach day to day or hour to hour without any long-term view of what's that player going to achieve, what does that player want to achieve, do we even ask them that question, and knowing ultimately where you want to get to as a coach, what do you want to achieve. So I would say a vision, having that long-term vision of we spend so much time working on long-term vision of players and goal setting for players, and so many times I'll do it on the courses. Who knows where they want to be in 5 years time, and virtually nobody in the classroom has got an answer. And yet you say, right, of your top 3 players now, where do you expect them to be in the next 3 to 4 years? And they'll tell you. And you're like, okay, so you've planned all that out for the people you're working for, but not for yourself. And I think that's one, we spend so much time worrying or planning for the players, we forget about ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. I work with a lot of coaches, and the story that I always tell them is that you're trying to prepare your player to be on their A game. Yeah, you're maybe a P, Q, R, and S. You need to get on your A game first, because your P, Q, R, S game might be good enough for your athlete now, but if your athlete needs to get better and improve and go to the next level, you've got to go there with them. You need to be better yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, what makes you a better coach? Better players. And the better players you get, the more you have to go and learn. Otherwise, you're going to lose them.
Yeah.
You're going to lose them along the way. If you can't stay in front of your player in terms of knowledge, experience, whatever, you're going to lose the players. And, all the different, I remember going to the first ever junior world ranking tournament I'd ever taken players to, and we were in Tunisia. So the conversations, the draw was taking place pretty much in a mixture of Arabic and French. So, we both have a tiny understanding of Arabic from our time in the Middle East. And then obviously some French knowledge, but not enough to really know what was going on. And all this finishes. And then basically everybody just jumps up and almost runs out of the room. And I'm sat there on my own thinking, what's going on here? And then the guy says, are you not going to book your practice courts for your players? I'm like, oh yeah, where? Oh, you're there. So I go to, oh, can I get like 10 o'clock tomorrow? No. 11, no. 12, no. I've only got 6:30 in the morning. And then you realize, why is everybody just run out? Because they've just run out to get the practice courts. Tough lesson, but those sort of experiences, until you've been there and done it, you have no idea yourself as a coach, because even if you've gone as a player, you've never been on the other side. So, I think it is, you never stop learning. You absolutely never stop learning. You always pick up something new. You know, very rarely will I go on a trip, you know, on a tour of China or India without picking up a new game or a new drill or a new idea or something. Very, very rare. And you always find out a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, I was going to say, what about business then, Adrian? Because obviously with the coaching and obviously the RPT is a business, what would be your 3 top tips on business lessons learned over the last 30 years?
Again, a vision,
Okay.
know where you want to get to. And then I think goal setting, you know, have that vision broken down into little pieces and your daily, your little chart. This is my everyday chart.
Look, there's my everyday performance planner.
Yeah, there you go. So I've got my little pad, and then I've got my book with the bigger plan. Brilliant. So they sit here on the side of the desk all day, you know, every day, and I still pretty much review my goals every Sunday evening. I'll have a look and see where we are, and it just makes everything become achievable. You know, I think that's the main thing. The vision, the goal setting, breaking it down into manageable pieces, and then I think probably the biggest thing, both in business and in coaching, is the passion. Just that passion to go and do, you know, go and leave your mark, go and leave your legacy. You know, go and you know, go and do what you really believe in, and I think that applies to any job. You know, I do various lectures for universities and stuff, the same as you, and it's always like, you know, if you don't, the one thing you're going to do most in your life is work. You know, that's the one thing you'll do more than anything else is work. So at least go and try and find something that you enjoy doing, because you're going to have to do it, you know, for a long, long time, you know, for 40 plus years, probably. So go find something that you enjoy.
I have a slight variation.
Easier said than done, but, you know.
My slight variation on that one is the one thing that you do in life more than anything else is breathe. So go and learn to breathe properly, breathe to relax, breathe to actually increase your lung capacity, breathe to help your voice control. That's a good one. I'm gonna flick one more question at you before I get to the most important part. Well, not the most important part, but I guess a part of the conversation we always want to talk about at this time of the year. But 5 years down the line, because you were talking about where you want to be in 5 years, where does Adrian Rattenbury and the RPT see themselves in 5 years?
The only thing I'm not sure about is which beach.
Okay, nice. Can I give you a couple of tips? The Maldives has quite a few good beaches that I've been on over there.
Yeah, I'll give it a try. I mean, to be honest, you know, I think it's more a case of semi-retirement than retirement, because I still love the traveling, especially. You know, I love being on the court. I love the teaching side, and I do love to travel. So, you know, I don't see that stopping. I see that becoming, probably staying as it is. You know, if I can make 8-10 trips a year, then I'm good. So almost semi-retirement, and then, you know, it's a case of putting in place the next phase, really. The transfer.
It would be nice in 5 years' time to re-bump into you in I think it was Singapore airport.
I was going to say, pick an airport, any airport. I think we've met in more than one airport.
Yeah,
I think I saw you in more other countries than this one for a period of time.
We did. Well, we definitely did Dubai and Singapore in a short period of time as well. Quick question there, because I think this time of the year everybody thinks about Australian Open. A little bit different this year, you know, not as many people in, you know, that the players haven't been able to prep. So especially for those players who like to go through their normal routines, their normal preparation period, that's going to be a little bit challenging for them. What's your thoughts on how it's going to go, and who are you picking, both male and female?
I honestly, I don't know, because I think that, you know, it's like all the sports at the moment, nothing's normal.
Yeah.
You know, the players probably for the first time for many years are on their own. You know, there is no coach. You know, Rafa's gone on his own. There's no Tony, no Carlos Moya. You know, there's no fitness coaches. There's nothing. And yeah, I think sometimes we underestimate the role of the coach in the pro tour events. You know, the tennis element is the simple part. It's how you fill in the space around. You know, you're playing every other day. What do you do on that day in between? How do you manage that time? You know, all those things where the coach is, you know, you're constantly working. You never stop working. And I think that's the bit the players are going to find tough. You know, how do they fill in the day between their playing? You know, because there's nobody, they're not interacting, they're not socializing, they're not going out for dinner and relaxing in the way they would. So it's a completely new challenge. And it could well be whoever manages that off-court time the best to make them mentally prepared on the court. And I think it's a mental more than ever this year. I think it's whoever's mentally prepared. You know, the top players, you know, you take the top 4 or 5, if they play to 80-90% of their capability, they can still beat 80-90% of the draw. You know, Rafa's 80% is good enough to beat 128 in the world, even if they play at 100%. So they've got that advantage, but it's when they, you know, if they all get down to the end, I think it's going to be whoever's just managing their off-court time to pick a winner. Yeah, pick anyone. You know, there's no clear choice this time for me.
Yeah, so it is a really interesting time, and the number of one-to-one individual sessions I've done recently with athletes in a hotel room by themselves, and one of the biggest conversations has been, I'm bored.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, this is incredible, because I need to take this learning from you guys at this level, because the number of athletes who I work with who are, you know, junior players and also their parents, these are the skill sets that they need to learn now in order to get to this stage.
There was a player, I won't give you the name, but there was a player a few years ago in Japan with a coach, and they'd gone to play a tournament over there, obviously, and they'd arrived and the practice day was completely washed out. There was no indoor backup, nothing. So the player just gets incredibly bored very, very quickly. And the only thing that was opening was in a town in Japan, was an art gallery. So coach decides to take the player to this art gallery. And after about 5 minutes, the player's like, okay, what do we do now? I've done that. I've seen these pictures. Yeah. And then the coach is like, yeah, but you know that picture there, that's worth $3 million. So how many Ferraris can you buy for $3 million? And you go, well, which Ferrari? You know, this one. Okay, but that picture there, that's 7 million. So that's what's that? 15 Lamborghinis. Anyway, 3.5 hours later, they come out of the museum, out of the art gallery, having valued every picture in there and related it to how many cars they could buy. And somebody said to the coach, well, how did you know how much these pictures were worth? He said, I have no idea. But he said, I know to engage my player in conversation, I need to talk about cars, football, or girls. And then they spent 3 hours managing time in that way. And that's coaching. Nothing to do with the tennis at all. That's helping to prepare your player to play the next day and understanding how your player thinks, how they work, how they operate. And that's where the players are going to struggle now, because there's nobody there to do that for them. There's nobody there to hold the hand. You know, they're flying on their own. They've probably not flown on their own for years.
Yeah.
I mean, Rafa always carries his own, but you know, a lot of the players don't even carry their own bag.
Yeah, one of the things which I've worked with players who've left the game is their insecurities about being by themselves, because everything's done for them when you're at the high performance level.
Yeah, from the age of 10. You know, I mean, again, go back to the system here. You know, we're funding kids at 8 years old. You know, we're sponsoring, the federation, the LTA are paying kid's 8-year-old. So, you know, what do you mean I've got to do that? And again, you know, another story from Rafa, Australian Open a few years ago, and he gets out the car, and, you know, the guy who looks after the locker room comes and he picks up the car, and Tony Nadal takes the bag off him and he puts it down, and he said, he may be number one in the world, but he carries his own bag.
It's his bag.
Yeah, it's his bag. And how many parents do you see carrying the kids' bags all the time? And yet Rafa's number one in the world, and he still carries his own bag. Bag's too heavy for him to carry. Well, he's got too much in it then, hasn't he? If he can't carry his own bag, he's carrying too much. Why do you need a 12 racket bag? You're 10 years old. You've got 2 rackets. You know, carry what you can carry.
We could talk all day, because every time you say something, I want to tell you another story. So I'm going to tell you one more about a kid who I worked with, and his biggest problem was racket bags. So, and it was a purely mental thing. Every time somebody walked on court with a bigger racket bag than him, he lost.
Oh, no way.
Had nothing to do with ability. It had to do with the size of the racket bag. So you would see some kid walk on court with a big, massive 12-pack racket bag, you know, and he would just be like, gone. But
brilliant.
It's crazy, but I love that. Adrian, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's always great catching up. Nice to see you. Let's hope that we get rid of COVID and we can bump into each other in an airport somewhere.
For real, yeah.
Bob, you take care. We'll speak soon. Thanks, Adrian.
Good to talk to you, Graham.
Take care.
Stay safe. Take care.